Welcome to the channel and this new Let's Play for Divinity Et Impera. As you probably guessed from the title of the video, this is going to be a Macedon playthrough. And the reason for that is the fact that this has been the most requested faction on my channel for some time now. And I really want to play it. I've played Macedon in the vanilla game, and I've been looking forward to playing Macedon in Divinity Et Impera, and a big thank you for all you guys who've requested this faction, given me a little bit of a prod to get on and do it. Also, there's been other people who've requested Rome. What I can assure you is that in the fairly near future I will be starting a regular Roman series, but there'll be a separate introduction videos. Now, before I get into the detail of the campaign, and we're going to have a look at the unit roster, a couple of caveats, and the first one is pretty important. If you've come in to see some campaign play and the initial battles, sorry guys, this is not the right video. What I suggest is you quit out and go to part 1, which should be available at the same time as this video, and feel free to enjoy. So that's the first caveat. The second caveat is going to be pronunciation. Now, Macedon is one of these factions where people get into disputes over what the correct pronunciation of Macedon is. Some people call it Macedonia or Macedon. Now, I'm going to put my hand up, guys. I have a preference for Macedon, but when I get a bit excited, especially in battles, or a bit frustrated, you will hear Macedon appear, and I will give you a big apologies in advance for that. I do try and keep consistent, but this is one faction where I know from previous experience I'm not going to be able to stick to one definition. So apologies for that, guys, but that's the way it's going to be. And the final caveat is the fact that this faction in Divinity Et Impera has a pretty tough start, which makes it an interesting faction to play. And there's a very good chance that if we get the bad breaks, because there is an element of luck when you actually start this campaign, if it goes against us and we go down, I'm not going to abandon the playthrough. What I will do is restart, and we will have another go at it. Learn from the lessons of the failed campaign and take it forward. So if things go wrong, don't despair, guys. I'm not going to give up. We will keep going and see how we can pull things together. So right, let's get on. I think what I want to do is have a quick look at the custom battle roster. Just get the unit info up, because Macedon has a very interesting roster compared to other factions, because in some ways it's unbalanced, but it's unbalanced in an unusual way. And I think what we'll do is we'll go through the units and I'll talk about them. I'm not going to talk about it in great details. This is an overview. So what we'll do, guys, is we'll start with the generals. Now, there is actually this Royal Bodyguard general unit. Sorry, you're not going to see it in this campaign. I like my generals to be actually mounted as cavalry units, because it means they can get round, they can add their moral support to areas where units are crumbling. And of course, in the early campaign, having strong cavalry units can make a lot of difference to some of the early battles, especially with Macedon, because we're going to be using quite a lot of hammer and anvil tactics, which I will explain later on. So having these actual cavalry units is going to be quite useful. I mean, they're pretty good. They've got they've got reasonable charge bonus and a bit of melee attack, so they're fairly good all-round cavalry. Now, the melee infantry units in this roster are not particularly brilliant. I mean, if you look at it here, I mean, they do the job, but I don't think this roster is particularly strong on melee units. And I think the hint here is the fact that we've got the Algarian Axemen and the Forex Warriors. They're both area recruitment units, and what we'll be doing is using area recruitment melee troops, especially in the early phases, to bolster our melee infantry line. Obviously, once we get to the late game, we'll be able to get to the Royal Palsats. These are pretty handy guys. They've got good armor, they've got good morale, and they've got a good attack and defense. And of course, we've got the Thorax Swordsman, not quite so good, but they'll be fairly useful once we get to the late game, and we've been able to get through the reforms to get the Thorax Swordsman. Spear unit, I don't think the spear units are going to play much in this campaign, to be honest. I mean, they're useful. They're probably good for some flanking defense, but they're going to get very quickly out of their league. So again, if we need some spear units, we'll probably see if we can pick up some area recruitment. So here we are now, guys. We're now moving on to the phalanx infantry. This is the real frontline powerhouse for Macedon. You can see here we got some Macedon hoplites, not particularly great, but I think there'd be a fairly good flanking unit in there. But of course, the key essence of the army roster is these pike units. We see we got 1, 2, 3. I mean, we got 4 pretty powerful pike units, especially once we get to the elite guard. I mean, the Thorax bronze shield pikes, they're going to be pretty useful. And of course, we've got Royal Pikemen and we got Greek bronze shield. So even in the early game, we're going to have these pretty powerful pike units, which, yes, they'll be able to pin the opposition, but they can also be quite useful in pushing forward and breaking through weaker enemy hoplite spear units. So these guys are going to be quite useful. And of course, what we're going to get is the shield bearers here, which, although they're a hoplite unit, are going to be very, very useful as a flank defense. So obviously we will probably start with these as a flank defense, and then we'll move on to these. Now, missile infantry is very much the same as melee infantry. I mean, yes, we got Greek archers. They're going to get out of their league relatively quickly. I'm not a big fan of javelin and passats, as you probably do realize if you watch my series. I'm not a great fan of these. But again, so what we're going to be doing, these guys are mercenary Rhodian slingers, but we certainly be trying to get to the point where we can actually recruit Rhodian slingers. These are some of the most OP units in Divide et Impera. They got range, they got clout, they got plenty of ammunition. So we'll be looking to get those. Of course, we've got Cretan archers, another mercenary unit. And of course, as we push east, we'll be looking to pick up some better quality archers from, say, around Armenia, going into that area as we move east. So the phalanx are going to be the powerhouse of our foot infantry, and of course what's going to make the hammer and anvil tactics actually work is the cavalry. And again, Macedon has a fairly mixed bag of cavalry. I mean, we've got a fairly good range of shock cav. I mean, we've got the Sarissa lancers. If you can keep these away from missile troops, they're very, very useful. They've got a very good charge bonus, but you can see they don't have a lot of armor, so it does make them a little bit vulnerable to missile troops. So these are going to be a key element of our armies. These shock cav should be able to deliver some knockout blows if we can get them in behind the enemy. Now, in contrast to that, you've got this melee cav, which, yes, it's citizen cavalry. It's got reasonable armor, good attack and defense, but it's not going to be one of my first choices. It's going to be more of a fallback cavalry, because down here, hidden amongst the missile cavalry, is Tarentines, which I personally feel free to contradict me, guys, is probably one of the best all-round cavalry in Divide et Impera. If you've watched any of my campaigns, you will know that as soon as I get access to Tarentines, I tend to recruit them into my armies as quickly as possible. And the reason for that, guys, is that despite having less armor, their missile capability, I mean, they're comparable with these guys for melee attack, and of course they're a bigger unit as well because they're a missile unit, so they're actually got 90 troops in as opposed to 75, because I'm playing on large units. That may not seem particularly that important, guys, but I can assure you that makes quite a big difference when you're actually using these units in the battlefield. And I think the combination of the missile unit with the good melee attacks defense, they've got a reasonable charge bonus as well of 81. So that makes them a good all-round cav, especially once you get them behind the enemy lines and you can sweep across the back, especially taking out missile units, other light troops. They can also use their javelins for flank attacks on heavy units. And of course, once the enemy is engaged in a front line, these guys can, working with a general unit and maybe another shock cav, these units can actually deliver enough of an impact to actually break pike hoplite units. So these are a very, very useful cavalry unit to actually have. And I think I've rambled on long enough now for this. So I think what we're going to do now is get to the grand campaign. Here we are, and of course the Macedon is part of the successor kingdoms. And I'm just going to read the first paragraph of this. It says, after Alexander's death, his mightiest generals tore apart his empire as they fought for it. Over the years, the claims and counterclaims of legitimacy deepened the rivalry between the successors. While all claimed to be Greek and promoted Hellenization in their kingdoms, each also claimed to be the one true inheritor of Alexander's legacy. And if I just scroll this down in case any of you guys want to read it. So we'll just scroll this down very, very slowly. I'll just leave it there for the end. So yes, that sets the theme for the campaign, and I think I want to pick up on that in this campaign. So I know it relates to the victory conditions, but I'd like to recreate Alexander's empire, prove that Macedon is the true inheritor of Alexander's legacy. So that's going to be a focus and a feature of this campaign. A bit more about that once we actually get in and talk a bit more about the campaign. And what we're going to do is say Macedon. So Macedon is part of the successor kingdoms. So we'll just have a quick look at these faction traits. Alexander's legacy, minus 20% resistance to foreign occupation. Successor conflicts, plus 10% morale for all units during battles against Hellenic factions. Well, that's a couple of fairly useful traits, but I think that may disappear fairly quickly. And of course, if we come down here and you can see the other successor kingdoms, which is the Sucalids, the Bactria, Epirus, and Egypt. So that is going to be very, very interesting to go up against these guys. This is where this actual bonus is going to come. So when we actually fight these factions. And just down here, you can see the starting position for Macedon. It's surrounded by enemies, and one of the big key elements to start with is actually getting a foothold here to be able to deal with the actual factions around us. This tends to be a fairly unstable area of the map at the start of the game. When I played Rome, you get constant messages about one faction or another declaring war on each other. So it's going to be a bit of a scrum to start with, and that comes back to what I was saying about that if luck goes against you, and if you get all the different factions starting to dogpile in on you, you can actually lose this campaign within the first 20-25 turns, because they literally all pile in on you. So we're gonna have to try and balance diplomacy with expansion. And you can see the political traditions is monarchy, and special system is, of course, it's reforms. I'm not going to read this, guys, so I'll just scroll through again very slowly in case you want to read it. I mean, it's basically outlining where we need to go and what we need to do. And there we are. I'm just going to get down to there. We'll have a quick look at the Macedon traits of barbarian subduers, increased morale against barbarians, commercial leases, increased industrial income. Again, this is in contrast to the Carthage campaign, where the focus was very much on trade and income from commerce. We're going to have to work on building up our industrial capability. It says Hellenic rivalry, minor diplomatic penalty with all Hellenic factions. So none of these guys are going to like us particularly very much. And of course, what we're going to do is have a quick look at the victory conditions. And as you see here, we'll probably go for a military victory, because this fits more with my own personal goal of recreating Alexander's empire, because we've got Macedonia, Egypt was part of it, Parsa, Bactria, and Syria were all part of his empire, and of course, but except for Italia. But what I'm kind of thinking, guys, is to start with, the focus will be going east to actually conquer that side, and then what we will do is hopefully have some nice mid to late back conflict with either Rome or Carthage. And of course, we've got to maintain 180 units in total, maintain 60 naval units. And a quick look at the economic one. See, the reason why I'm not particularly interested is because this is Corsica and Sardinia, and it kind of takes us in the wrong direction, and I think this is very much the same. It's a bit better. We've got Pannonia there, so these victory conditions kind of take us a little bit in the wrong direction for what I want to do for this Let's Play. So I think that's about it, guys. What I'm going to do now is we're going to go through onto the campaign map. I'm going to do an introduction to the campaign, a kind of overview, but again, to emphasize, guys, there's going to be no real actual gameplay in this video, and what I will do in part 1 is then pick up on the real campaign.
The barbarians are coming. Tylis in particular is a problem and must be kept in check. The Athenians continue to resent your rule. They may turn against you, or convince your Spartan allies to betray their treaty. No matter, faced with hostility from Epirus, Sparta should remain true and may distract Epirus long enough for you to consolidate your rule at home. Conflict with the remaining successor kingdoms is inevitable, and you must be ready. Do not be afraid to seek military support from others if necessary. Rest assured, Macedon is the true heir to Alexander's legacy. It will rise once more.
And there we are, guys. Macedon is the true heir to Alexander's legacy. It will rise once more. Well, that's the objective of the campaign. And what I will say is I let that intro run, but please be aware that is actually the intro for the vanilla game, not for Divide et Impera. But it does give a good overview of the situation in the area, even if it is a little bit incorrect in a couple of places. So we're just going to cancel that. And of course, we got the standard objective issued. Completely control 2 provinces either by direct ownership or through client states and military allies. And just to emphasize what I meant by that not being completely accurate, is the introduction says that Athens is a client state and Sparta is a defensive ally, and you can see here that they're actually not. They actually both hate us. You can expect trouble from that direction immediately. And the other thing I need to do almost straight away, guys, is just going to go into here, into options, go to game settings, and we're going to drop the battle difficulty to, because sometimes it can be a bit tricky to actually see what it is. So we're going to set the battle difficulty to normal, because otherwise I will forget completely and we'll be fighting the campaign on hard battle difficulty. So that's done. The other thing I'm also going to do is drop a quick save, because this will be the starting point for the part 1. So everything I do from this point on is got nothing to do with the ongoing campaign. This is just me talking about what needs to be done, what the options are, and just to give you guys a little bit of a background to the campaign. You can see here what we start with Pella, which is a regional capital of Macedonia, or Macedonia, I don't know how you want to pronounce that. I mean, this is where I think some of the confusion with the name for the faction comes from. We've got a tiny little army here, which is but we've got a reasonable amount of starting cash, a reasonable amount of income. And of course, our first target will be Larissa. So the first thing we would do is move the agent down there so we can actually see. And of course, what we would do, just to give you a quick overview of part of the first step, is we'll come out here. I don't think we can recruit very much. Obviously, these guys are, I think I probably would like a couple of decent strengthen the pike line up from the beginning. I don't think these hoplites are going to be as useful as the, I think the pike line would be better. And then of course what we would do then is snag all the available mercenaries, and that will give us an army to come in and take Larissa with a carefully well fought battle. But you can see straight away we've run out of cash. Now I think from a strategic point of view, I think that's all we need to talk about, is just come in here. Now my initial thoughts are going to be, let's get my paintbrush, it would be get this area on side, try and keep these guys as peaceful as possible. Obviously, as I just said, the initial thrust will come this way because we need to take out the Anatolian League. Invariably, Sparta will declare war on us in the first or second turn. Athens is a bit slower, so what we'll be thinking of is getting that. We'll probably have to take down Sparta, and of course hopefully Epirus will get into a battle with the Romans and be distracted. And of course once we've got this area under control, we'll get our spy over here, try and make friends with the Romans in the short term, because obviously we're going to need to take Epirus out to consolidate the whole of Macedonia. That's going to be our first target. If Athens plays fair, and even Sparta, if they keep out of my territory, we'll just leave them alone, because they can be a bit of a problem regions to take on. And of course, strictly speaking, they're not part of Alexander's empire, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to visualize the map. And then of course, once we've got this area nice and consolidated, our first area task will be to push out here. May need to get this area consolidated because Thrace is a very rich province. It will be the engine that will drive our economy. And of course, it also gives us access to some fairly good melee units with Thracian warriors and elements like that. And then that will give us the springboard to work on our wider strategy, which is to come east, because of course Bactria is over here. And of course we got Egypt down here. So what we'll be looking for is to effectively create an empire that kind of fans out like that, which is pretty close to Alexander's empire. I think he didn't conquer quite down this far, and of course he went off the map here, which we can't replicate on when he goes to it. He virtually went all the way to the borders of India. So that would be the early to moving into the mid-game objectives. Hopefully during this process Carthage and Rome will stay strong here. As I say, initially we will try and be friends with the Romans because we don't want the Romans pecking in from this direction. Hopefully the Romans will deal with the Carthage or be occupied there. They will also go up this direction and maybe deal with the barbarians, because I don't really want to come up this way. Invariably in my campaigns I normally did, if you just watch my Carthage campaign, you'll be aware that I ended up having to take most of this area just in order to get the necessary peace to detach my armies to come down and deal with Egypt. That could be quite a fun element. Of course, once we've got our Eastern Empire nice and consolidated, we will certainly come out here and take on the Romans and actually see what we can do. I mean, I won't set out really to destroy the Romans. I mean, I'll be quite happy just to take Latinum here, you know, come up to here and stop. And if we push the Romans back that way, I'll be quite happy with that. So that's going to be the overall strategy of the campaign. I've laid out the first turn. I can't think of anything else. We'll just have a quick look at diplomacy, just to say, so like I said, is because most of them hate us. This is quite standard for the beginning, but we could probably get a treaty with these guys. They look how so they would like. I mean, I normally go for trade agreements first, and then see if we can get non-aggression. Yep. So we get those guys on board. How about these guys might be high, yep, because they've probably got friends with this. So in fact, can we join the two together and get a bit of cash? That'd be cool. So maybe we get 600. Oh, we could go a bit further. So, sorry, I should be playing the game like this. Don't want to push me luck too far. That gets those guys on side. I don't think anyone else. Bithynia would be a good target. No, they don't like us. Well, sometimes it pays to. Maybe we'll just give it a go. No. So I don't think we're going to be able to do much more. I don't really want to get into a peace with Epirus because that will upset Rome. The Suclids won't really want to come on board. I mean, I'd love to kind of piece these guys out for a little while, but I think that's enough, guys. I'm starting to play the game, so, and obviously there's an odds on that when I actually play this in part 1, we may not be able to get these political alliances. There's always a few vagaries with the diplomatic side of this game. So I think that's about it, guys. I can't think of anything else I want to talk about in here. I think it gives you guys a bit of an overview. I'm sure if any of you guys have been playing Rome 2, you'll be familiar with the map. I think this is where I'm going to leave it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it interesting, and hope you're going to enjoy the campaign as it evolves. Until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.